Okay, guys, I can see that you're already starting on the Mentee. We've got somebody in an odd place with some interesting letters, but we do have people from all over the world. So welcome and thank you for joining our Future PMO Academy Learning Week. We are in the last day, we're in the last throes. We've got a few different webinars for you today, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Future PMO. So hopefully you can all see my screen. I can see that most people, that the attendees have stabilized a little bit. So let's get started. So today what I wanted to do, myself and my colleague Susan Riordan, we wanted to kind of bring all the messages from all the different events. We've had 5 courses this week, we've had 13 webinars, and we will finish the event with our second networking event this evening. So we hope you can really join us for that. We've got the CEO of the APM joining us for that to give us a real perspective on how COVID has impacted our industry. And with all of those messages, we are conscious that not everybody can attend everything. So we thought we would pull those messages into some practical things that you can maybe do to support your PMO and also your own development. So, like I say, we're going to go through these messages, we're going to look at your PMO, and we're also going to give you some opportunities to strengthen your skills, your PMO skills, and even your technology as well. So some of the tools that we've been working with and releasing over the summer to really help to give you some reflective practice on how we are performing. So for those of you that don't know me by now, I'm sure most of you do, my name is Emma-Ruth Arnaz-Pemberton. I'm the Director of Consulting Services at Wellingtone. I'm quite heavily involved in the industry. As you can see, I'm involved with the Association for Project Management. I'm a fellow of that association, and I'm involved with PMI Spain and the UK, as well as the IPMA, the International Project Management Association, and the Spain Association, IPRO, as well. Within Wellingtone, I'm a Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility lead. What does that mean? That means that I like the trees and the polar bears. That's what I focus on for some of my role. And that means that I get involved with a number of different organisations, most notably Project Management for Change. Those of you that have followed us for a while will know that we brought the Project Management Day of Service to the UK before lockdown and before COVID, where we give charities pro bono support. But from people like yourselves, we invite everybody to kind of come and help out. And I'm also the organizer of our Future PMO conference, our flagship conference, which last year brought together people from 26 different countries. This year we had to take the decision to cancel that event, and that's where the idea, the brainstorm for this week's event happened or came from. You can follow me on social media. If you search for PMO Ninjas, you will find me. I really like ninjas, but I also think that PMOs we tend to do a lot of stuff in the background. We're quite stealthy. So that's why I have PMO Ninjas, and you can kind of follow me and see all the stuff that me and my colleagues all get up to. Okay, so I'm going to skip over. We are having some technical issues with my colleague Susan. Susan is a senior consultant at Wellingtone, and hopefully she'll be able to join us a little bit later and tell us a little bit about herself. So we're going to start off with some stats. Let's look what the industry is really telling us at the moment. And the industry is really telling us that the world is changing. Our role, our project management world is changing. So we need to consider what will the future look like. Particularly, we looked at, or we will be looking at later, around what happens when artificial intelligence comes in. That was one of the conversations that was raving before the pandemic. And maybe, some people say that maybe 80% of project management tasks will be able to be done by AI. If that's the case, what on earth will happen to our PMOs if we don't necessarily need to do all of those technical tasks with that human interaction? What will happen to us? So we did a little bit of hunting around for some interesting stats. We think we found some. So the first 3 are from the PMI Pulse of the Profession research from this year, from 2020. What's really interesting about that for me is that we see the technical skills. We absolutely expect that to be there in terms of importance of skills for project managers and project professionals within the industry. What is interesting is that leadership skills and business skills are starting to creep up. So we can see that leadership skills are actually getting really, really close to that 68% who say that technical skills are the most important. So we can immediately see that the role of project professionals and PMOs is slowly shifting from that very technical focus to having some more business acumen, better leadership skills, and really being able to support people. On the fourth statistic, if you like, is from our Wellingtone State of Project Management Survey. Again, it's the 2021, where 78% of respondents told us that they feel they will need some more skills personally to be able to do their job in the future, whether that be technical skills, and we'll talk about technology in a short while, or whether it's because of all the methods and standards that we have to deal with at the moment. So there are some really interesting skills that are coming up. I think there is somebody who is not on mute. Someone's managed to take themselves off mute. So if you are, then please do pop yourself on mute for me. Thank you. And bless you if you sneeze. Okay, so now that we know kind of what the industry is telling us right now, we now need to consider what the future looks like. So when we think about our PMO world and our project management world, we are starting to see the disruption of a number of things, in particular the project lifecycle. Taking the time to make project management simpler, maybe more accessible. We've seen this through the development and the release of Microsoft's newest product, Project for the Web, which is designed for people who are not professional project managers in the grand scheme of things. It's designed for a very simple way of doing project management. And remember that the APM's vision is a world where all projects succeed, and project management is a life skill for all. Doesn't matter what job you do, you still need to plan, you still need to deal with ambiguity, you still need to talk to people. As much as we may not want to all the time, we do have to. So actually making our life cycles and our ways of working a little bit simple, a little bit more accessible, and a little bit more inclusive. We are seeing this. We're seeing it through different methods that are coming into play. We're seeing it with different brand new management structures that are being designed by organizations. And put quite simply, everything's being reviewed so that anybody can apply it, anybody can use it. We talk in our PMO practitioner role at length about get rid of the project speak. No one else speaks project speak except for project managers and PMO people. So we need to humanize it a little bit and make it that bit more inclusive. Also, how we measure. It used to be very much that time, cost, quality, scope perspective on how we measure performance of projects. So actually, do we need to start thinking now about different ways of measuring or additional ways of measuring, maybe looking at, the sustainability perspective, people, profit, and planet. Maybe our organizations are looking more towards the portfolio and that strategy, given that many are having to change direction completely. So we're looking at, the risk, the reward, and the resources that we need. So we are seeing disruption happening in different organizations. And that lends itself to kind of these 5 different perspectives when we think about the future of the industry. So, there are 3 steps to becoming a strategy implementation office, which is the new sexy thing that lots of people do keep talking about. And it's really about reporting on portfolio and compliance and oversight and methodology, but also looking at the individual performance as well. So understanding how PMOs are able to support the organization with maybe a slightly different service offering, maybe changing our service catalog so that we can support our organizations in whatever it needs, whether that is at that high level value, whether it is more about the output of what we're delivering from a project perspective, or maybe it's more about people and supporting them through not just the last 7 months that we've all had to deal with across the whole world, but really looking at what our organizations need in the future. One of the key things that I'll also talk about, I'm sure, a little bit later is around the technology side. Before, PMOs weren't really that technology focused, maybe. We were very focused on the people, the practice and the mechanics of delivering projects. And technology was something that supported us, whereas now we have people who are having to learn brand new ways of communicating, a brand new technology that they have to get their heads around. And we can't assume that everybody is tech savvy. So maybe our future service offering, incorporates an element of that into it, an element of the need to do that technology. Also in that service offering is not just about the tools, but the techniques that we're using. We've had a number of different debates during this week during webinars and our PMO after hours session that we had on Wednesday around the different methodologies and how can we make that work in the sense of, if we take one, do we take one methodology over another? Can we tailor one to support the other? Should we be crushing them together and creating a more hybrid way of working? So really understanding what's going to be important for our organization before we define our services, because our services as PMOs, they will be different in the future. Next, I want to talk to you about the PMO operating environment and really having maybe a little bit more self-awareness that traditionally PMOs would have. So traditionally, PMOs are very much perceived as we sit and we, in our office and we develop stuff and we don't really have that much of a view of what's going on. That world is dead now. We need to make sure that we are looking at the factors that are impacting our project environment, our organizational environment, and even the external environment that we've all been impacted by, no matter who you are or where you work or what you do. So understanding and analyzing that view of what is going on that could really undermine or change the way that my PMO works. Also looking at the industry and the project economy. And, according to research, individuals working in project-based roles will increase from 66 million in 2017 to 88 million, which has been forecast in 2027. So those numbers are insane when you think about, how quickly the industry changes and how much that APM's vision is true, that it is a life skill. There are so many people who are working in this space now, whether formally or informally. At Wellingtone, we call people accidental project managers, where you get given something to do, you're free, it's kind of your area of expertise, so you can run this for us, and you end up falling into project management. The PMO operating environment also, we need to consider how we do stuff. What challenges is that bringing right now? Is it become really difficult to do our audit and assurance remotely because we're so used to being in a room with other people, being able to look people in the eye and read the room, that we need to really consider whether our processes are serving us right now. And when we had the webinar this week on looking at challenge in the agile change management space, really, agile culture and frameworks are in high demand, especially for medium to large organizations. We know this, and yet we very rarely do something about it other than, well, it's an us and them. That area of the business is working in agile and we are working in our traditional way. We need to change the mindset and understand that they shouldn't be mutually exclusive. The PMO operating environment, by its very definition, is all about change. So we need to make sure that if agile with a big A is a thing that is important, we need to understand, we need to be present in agile. If agility is what we're being asked for, then that's a different thing. And we've seen that through a number of different conversations we've had in our webinars and in our after hours session this week around understanding the difference between the need for agile and the need for agility. And how can PMOs really support that in the future? Next, passing the acid test. So the acid test has been around for a little while, and it used to be very much, if you knock on someone's door, do they know who you are? If you ring somebody, do they pick up the phone, or do they avoid your call because they think, oh, it's the PMO, I'm going to, need to do something. But now we have to change our perspective. Now we're passing the acid test virtually. So do people answer when you call on MS Teams? Do they respond straight away when you send them a direct message? How quickly are they at responding to, any situation? Do they join in with some of the events that maybe you're putting on virtually? So we really need to think about how do we pass that acid test of people know who we are, they know what we do, they know why we add value. And in our webinar yesterday with the PMI about reinventing webinars, we really saw how we can make meetings and webinars and facilitated events maybe just a little bit more interactive. We're using Mentimeter today just to get some of your thoughts and a bit of, get to know you a little bit, but really making those interactive sessions, leaving more of an impact for people, creating value for participants so that they take something different out of it. And I know that certainly from that, I will be taking some of that and applying it to my future webinars. So if you were on that one yesterday, this one might seem a little bit boring in comparison. And during that webinar, they gave us the do's, the don'ts. Don't have 7 million slides because most people don't have that level of attention span. Don't put lots and lots of text. Make sure the message is clear, to make sure that we are able to bring people in on the same journey that we are, but also making sure they know that we are there to support them. Next is all about technology and transformation. We have to be adaptable. We've had to be adaptable, and that's not just the PMO, that's all of our organizations. So we need to make sure that we remain adaptable because technology is continually changing now. There are releases to different technologies all the time. We also have to figure out how we go from having many forms of virtual communication, because kind of everybody had to pick something at the beginning of lockdown, and really make it repeatable so that if somebody joins our organization, we're not trying to show them 10 ways to communicate. We've maybe got 2 or 3 depending on what they do. Actually understanding taking it to a project management level. So how do we repurpose and understand the value of having lots of different technology and having to teach people technology? What is the return on investment? How do we support people if we're trying to speak to them in 4 or 5 different ways? Also considering data. Data is more valuable than gold, I think, nowadays. So it's important to think about, we have all this technology and we need to transform our business and our PMOs. But how do we do that? How do we cut through that data? I think it was Harry Thespeles yesterday that talked in one of our webinars about, there's lots of data out there. You don't need that much to do the job that you need to do. But when you do have data, turn it into information. He said that data is not information. That will also be true depending on who you're dealing with, who you're presenting that to, and what kind of personality they have. Certain people don't have, a very analytical brain. So you give them a big giant spreadsheet and you'll lose them in about 5 seconds. Next and last, and maybe the most important, we have team and community. We now have various change management, team communication channels, organizational channels to talk to each other, like I've just talked about. And Peter Taylor yesterday talked about the hive mind and the importance of creating a swarm of people who are on the same journey, who are in the same space as us. And at Wellington, we have that naturally. So as part of our development of PMO communities and courses, we have our group of PMO practitioners, and they are our hive mind. Every time we want to do something new, they're the people we go to and we say, in our next course, this is what we're thinking. What do you think should be included? They're the ones that pilot things. They're the ones that give us the topics for our networking events, like the ones we're going to be doing tonight. And as a thank you, we give them, lots of access to different stuff, including additional information on what we're doing and insights and our Dr. PMO clinic, so that they can get half an hour with somebody just to bounce some ideas off. So creating that hive mind, that swarm of ideas and engagement is really, really important. We need to consider what people need from the PMO, what they want and what they don't want as well, and really understand how do we get them into our sphere, how do we include them in everything that we are doing. Team leadership. I'm about to do a presentation for the IPMA, which includes a whole section about leadership. It's no longer leadership is changing. Leadership has changed. And in order to move our PMOs and our projects forward, we need to make sure that our leaders are also adapting to the new situation, that they are adapting to the new way of working. One of the pluses for me of this whole lockdown situation is that we trust people a little bit more. Before, I think there were many organisations that mandated you will be in the office 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, you will have an hour's break. That can no longer happen. And as a result of everybody having to stay at home for a few weeks, what we found is that organisations started to trust people for maybe the first time. And people are being treated like adults to some degree. There are distractions at home. So team leadership has to change. It has to be a little bit more fluid. And in my world, it has to be a bit more authentic. It has to be authentic in that when we talk to people, we have to make sure they're okay. We can't assume that people are having enriching and fulfilling conversations every day at home. We can't assume, because that's not the truth for most people. A lot of the time we're like, very distracted, got loads and loads of stuff going on. I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago when somebody was knocking on my door trying to deliver something and they wouldn't leave. So we need to make sure that our PMOs are modernized in the sense of being adaptable and supportive of the situation and how quickly it's changing, but our leadership also has to do that. And a massive part of that is about community. And we saw that in one of our first webinars of this week, where Tim Jakes talked about the new rules of the team from IPMA. And he suggested that we need to focus more on building new types of teams that can work remotely better, more efficiently, that they understand that actually before I just press that call button, I'm going to check somebody's calendar and make sure that they are not in the middle of something. Because we try and be helpful humans. And if somebody interrupts us and asks for something, we'll generally do it as a rule. And just the last point I wanted to talk about in terms of this section and pull in some of those key messages together from all of our days together, was from the PMO webinar, past, present, but mostly future, where the past was very focused on centre of excellence, balanced 5 Ps of PMO, operating at an enterprise level. Then we looked at the present PMO, so looking at reteaming and really needing to engage virtually, creating connected teams and accepting the natural disruption of our world right now. And then we talked about the future with 2 critical areas that PMOs can consider and exploit. Social collaboration. Do not underestimate the power of the hive mind for greater success of your PMO and your projects. And also the rise of the informal project managers, the accidental project managers, as we call them at Wellingtone, which is kind of engaging the non-project managers, making it inclusive, like I said earlier, so that we let go a little bit of control, that element of control that PMOs love, that it really scares us if we can't have it. We need to let go of that a little bit. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight on some of the stuff we talked about. And now we need to understand how that fits into your reality. That all sounds great. So for that, we refer to our Wellingtone Competence Framework, which splits everything into strategy, delivery, and capability. And we look at everything through these 3 lenses when it comes to developing PMOs and PMO people. So the strategy, we've already talked briefly about the acid tests. Do they answer the team's call? Are we considering that people don't know who maybe we are when we call, or they don't read our emails because they don't really understand what it's about? We also need to consider our stakeholders and what's their behaviour like at the moment. There was some research from McKinsey that showed that senior teams in particular, who used to get reporting on a monthly basis, they now want it weekly. And things that used to happen or they used to get involved in on a biannual basis, a 6-monthly basis, or even annual, they now want to do monthly. So are they behaving in a rational way because of the situation that we find ourselves in? And we need to be careful as PMOs to feed that need, but not overfeed it. I know lots of PMOs who feel like they are a data collector right now. They feel like all they do is build reports. They've had to stop a lot of everything else. So we still need to be mindful that our customers they know what they want, but they also don't know really what they need a lot of the time. So we need to make sure that we're not overfeeding them and setting that expectation that can't just drop everything and stop supporting lots of other people. You know, I want a Maserati, but I don't need a Maserati. Doesn't mean if I ask for it, I should get it necessarily. So we need to make sure that we don't overfeed our stakeholders. We also need to look at the stressors. Stressors are brand new. We have new stressors in 2020 that we never had before. So we need to be more aware of our and our colleagues' surroundings. And like I said earlier, not everybody's having fulfilling and enriching, fruitful conversations all day long. So make sure you check the environment before deciding what it is that your PMO is going to do next. In delivery, one of the things that has been really popular over the last few months has been maturity reviews. I've spent most of the summer doing maturity reviews for people, supporting them in assessing where they are, where they want to go, and creating the roadmap to kind of get there. And I think that's because people have taken the time with the slight disruption to kind of reflect a little bit on their own performance. As a result of that, we developed a bunch of MOT tools, which we will be giving you access after this webinar, so that you can look at that. You can look at how you are performing and really take that step back, really look at how you're performing and take a more critical view, maybe, on what the future might look like. We've already talked about building positive relationships, but really focusing on those accidental project managers, not your traditional customer base for a PMO. Making sure that we're a good advocate for change. We live in this VUCA world. We always have done, and now more than ever, I think it's been proven that our world is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. So whether change has been comfortable for you this year, your PMO, you as an individual, it has also provided some positives. I mentioned earlier about organisations trusting people more. Some organisations are reporting their communication is better than it's ever been between teams. Organisations that were putting off transformation have suddenly had to transform. So, maybe it's helped us to make decisions a bit quicker for organisations and understand that the world will not end if we try something new. And most people are citing a better work-life balance now. We're not spending so much time in our cars. We're spending more time at home for those of us that used to travel. The key is to get into your own routine of how you make that work. And lastly, capability. This is all about walking the talk, really. So making sure that we're brave, that we ask for feedback, and that we're brave when we receive it. So make sure that you address it. Make yourself accountable to somebody else to be able to do that. Recognize and understand and reflect on whether your team understand what you're there to do, never mind the rest of the business. Start with your own customers, your own team, to really understand if they realize what it is that you do, why you're there. Always go back to your why. And like we've talked about, empathize with other people's situations. You don't know what's really going on in people's lives and home offices and everything else, and try and build that team culture back a little bit. That's really easy to lose because we're all kind of working for ourselves now, right? We don't see anybody a lot of the time. So one of the things that we found works, 30-minute, half an hour, a couple of times a week with no work talk, is enough to just get people to go, oh, actually, it's really nice to speak to people and other people, not about work and not about, hi, honey, how was your day? Actually giving people the opportunity to connect. People are really craving that at the moment. So make sure that your PMO is really focusing or looking at these areas of strategy, delivery and capability when looking at the future. Next, and importantly, how does this fit into you, your development? And again, we turn to our Wellingtone Competence framework because you also need to grow. It's not just about your PMO. So again, we use strategy, delivery and capability. So in the strategy space, some key things for you to start thinking about is strategic thinking, first of all. We get so caught up in the day job that we forget to look at the bigger picture. Now's a really good time to start really looking to maintain that day to day, absolutely, but have that lens on the big picture. Instead of just getting bombarded and lost in the detail, focus on what can we innovate? What different ways can we innovate? What does the horizon tell us is happening? What can we see? And that way you will start as an individual to be able to support your PMO better, and by definition then your business. Really important in this strategic thinking, know when to stop things. We all know, I'm sure, Lidl last year or the year before, they stopped a $500 million spend on a project or program in transformation, I suppose you could call it. And they got, $500 million in and stopped it because it was not the right thing to do. That's a very extreme example. But we've seen lots of projects and project managers and project professionals with nothing to do because their projects have stopped or been placed on hold. So we really need to focus on what are the right things to do and being brave enough to make those difficult decisions. Next, business acumen and focus, understanding the need for business change in organizational context. It's painful when organizations change direction, but I would suggest there isn't one type of organization that hasn't changed direction in one way or another over the last 7 months. Really understanding you as an individual and how you navigate your political landscape with some business acumen. Then we've got harnessing knowledge. So really championing that culture of learning through lessons, through exploiting new ways to improve and learn increase our knowledge. Sharing that. We know that online learning has increased by 200% during this year because people are improving their skills. So really understanding how we take that knowledge and apply it. Does that mean that it's a real positive because things that our PMO wanted to do earlier, we couldn't do because we didn't have the skills, whereas now we have skills, we have brand new skills. There is a risk to that I always talk about. The flip side of so many people doing online learning is that there's lots of experts out there, and you can't see me, but I'm putting experts in quotation marks, where people have done a couple of hours worth of reading stuff and they've got a certificate, and I don't believe a course makes you a practitioner of anything. I think that's experience. So we do need to be mindful of that and being cognizant of that. And that's something that we need to learn. Is this true knowledge, or is this something that I now know a bit about? And actually I need to apply it in order to really understand. I'm sure if you've all done your project management qualifications, you didn't really start learning until you practiced project management in whatever the way that looks. In the delivery space, we have to think now about being more pragmatic. A lot of us have been in the same role for a long time, so we might be a little bit stuck in our ways maybe. So we need to be pragmatic about opening our minds, maybe getting rid of some of the stuff that we haven't used for the last 6 months. Like I said earlier, lots of organizations have struggled with assurance and audit and things like that. And now is the time to maybe look at it like when you clear your wardrobe out. If you haven't used it for 6 months, you probably don't need it. So maybe throw it out and maybe think about doing things in a slightly different way. Also, supporting decision making. Can we maintain logical thought when key decisions need to be made? Can we demonstrate an ability for evaluating options? Can we provide insights and analysis to support making the right decisions and to take calculated risks? Now, in March and April was the first time a lot of organizations took a risk. They didn't get a choice. But nothing bad happened for the most part. We had a few teething problems with technology or whatever, but where we may have shied before, make sure that you as an individual don't shy away from what this new world is bringing. And analysis and reporting. I've talked a little bit about critical thinking, but really utilizing the technology, the data modeling that we now have, the techniques that you're probably learning online, and ultimately really taking all that data and, as we learned yesterday from the webinar, turning it into proper information, studying old outcomes, understanding what happened back then, monitoring what we do moving forward, I'm sure there are lots of lessons that we can learn from the last 6 or 7 months. And lastly, in the capability space, champion and embrace change. Identify your champions. You'll have people who love the situation that we're in right now, in the sense of we get to work from home and we've got lots of more technology available to us. And we talked about it in our webinar with Laura Barnard from PMO Strategies. You know, let us be the calm in the chaos. So PMOs, if you think about who we are and what we do, we've always lived and survived and existed in this VUCA world, in this volatile, uncertain of whether we're going to still be around, complex because we've got lots of stuff to think about and loads of customers, and ambiguous world. So we've succeeded in chaos all of our lives. So this is our superpower. Now is the time to be strong for our organizations. Now we have a real chance to make a real difference and really make our organizations strong. Next, I wanted to talk about briefly emotional intelligence, and I've talked about it already, and really just to think about you, your needs, others' situations, and take the time to adapt your style to those situations. Lastly, communication, virtual communication as it is now. Learn how to make your online interactions more fruitful, more memorable, and do not underestimate the power of that right now. Like I say, if you were on our webinar yesterday, this one maybe seems a little dull in comparison. There were no quizzes, there were no prizes or anything like that. So do that. That's one of the things that I've taken away from this week, is actually we need to maybe think differently about how we communicate with our communities. So hopefully that all makes sense. Last thing I want to talk to you about are the opportunities for you to strengthen your skills and your PMO. So during the summer, we released 3 different webinars that really focused in on reflecting on performance. And we did it at 3 levels. We did one, which was your PMO performance. So this is like an MOT, or if you're in Spain, I know we have a big Spanish contingent, the ITV. Assessment of your PMO and how it is currently performing, and you can see you get a nice little grid, and it actually shows you some of the areas that you might want to consider improving in, as well as some of your strengths that you can lever for the future. The next one we did was about doing an MOT on your technology, so really understanding, by answering some key questions, what technology is more likely to work for you. Do you need something that is, you know, meaty and governance rich, that does all sorts of different things? Do you need just a day-to-day planner type activities? Or do you need something in the middle? Do you need something that caters to your accidental project managers, to those people who aren't running massive pieces of work, and the standard way of you doing things is maybe a little bit too heavy? And then lastly, the one we did in very early September was around you as an individual. So how to MOT your own project management skills. And again, you can see you get like a little radar, so you can go through and effectively answer how you feel you are reflecting. And all of these you can customize, well, certainly the PMO and the individual you can customize. So you can add your own sections if your PMO does something that isn't included necessarily. Or in the skills, it helps you to create an action plan so that you can use it to improve your skills over time. These are all free. They're all, you know, not coded. There's nothing complicated about them, and you can access them on our website. And after this webinar and this week, you will get all of the links, I'm sure, to all of this stuff that is available for you to download, to use it, to take the time to really reflect on your performance of you as an individual, as well as you as your PMO, and really understanding what you can do to make things better to support your organization in the future. So I'm going to leave this slide here just so that you can kind of find us if you do need to link in or anything. Unfortunately, Susan wasn't able to join, but hopefully let's have a look and see if we have any questions. Let's have a look. Hi, Ashok. Nice to see you again. I think you've been to like all of our sessions all this week. It's really nice to see your name. And hi, Merv. So yeah, we don't have any key questions, so do feel free to have a look at those if you want to ask anything specific. And a couple of you have asked for the Mentee information, so here's the Mentee. So we've got here 1163090, and we can see that these are now starting to grow a little bit. So we can see 73% of our delegates today were PMO or enabling functions. We've got some who are delivery managers, some PPM leaders, and some others. And the really important one that I really wanted to get your perspective on was to understand, based on what you've heard and your experiences, what does your future PMO look like based on everything that you've experienced this week, maybe as part of our Future PMO Learning Academy. And we can see value adding is really important. The big ones, agile. Is that agile with a big A or agility? I'm not sure. Whoever put that in, maybe tell me in the chat, in the questions. I think we need a little bit of both, if I'm honest. I think we need, to understand that a lot of our projects have a technology element to them, and a lot of technology is better if we run it in that more agile way. But also our PMOs require agility. We need agility in the way that we do things. We need pragmatism. We need to be proactive right now. We can't sit back and go, this is the way we've always done it, because the world doesn't respect that. Our worlds are changing all the time. If you're in the UK, every day there's a new announcement or something that may or may not be happening. So we need to make sure that we're looking at that. I really like that someone's put exciting and powerful, and it really is. And I hope that if you have managed to come onto any of our events this week, I really hope that you've been inspired by what you've heard. We tried really hard to pick a bunch of different perspectives, and hopefully today I've kind of, disseminated that for you a little bit as well. And, influencing PPM decisions, I think that's something that we can do so much right now. We have the data, we can turn it into information, and we can really support that. And I really like effect oriented as well, that we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're adding value, that we're adding that championship of a culture of change, that we're looking at outcomes and how we can support people with not just the technical aspects of project management, but also the behavioral aspects, and getting them maybe to learn a bit more about the context of their decisions and the way that they work. And I'm kind of going to finish on relationships. I've said it and I will continue to say it every time I do any kind of webinar at the moment, is do not assume that just because everybody's at home, they're having a great time. So take the time to find out how people are doing. Add 5 minutes onto your meeting to ask the question. Don't be impatient with people who maybe you feel like they just want to talk at me. That they need that. People need that right now. People are craving community right now, because it's something that is what we've lost in many ways, is that ability to let's just grab a coffee and have a chat. We don't necessarily do that anymore as much. So yeah, hopefully, like I say, you found this useful, you found it interesting. We will be publishing all of our events, all the videos and the slide decks and any tools that have come out of it as well. And we'll make sure that we use the Mentimeter stuff that we've got. This is a great perspective of what the future PMO looks like, that more strategic, evolving all the time. So like I say, we don't have any other key questions, so I'm going to let you go there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you haven't already, do register for our event this evening at 5:30, where we've got an industry perspective from the APM, and also we've got 2 breakout rooms and lots of different announcements from Wellingtone. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you soon, PMO Superheroes.